I am Meryl Thompson. Even at 65, I sometimes fondly recall the hustle and bustle of Hollywood. Having lived in the world of filmmaking for over 20 years, I now spend my days quietly. I live alone in a spacious mansion in Beverly Hills, dedicating my heart and soul to charitable activities. The well-manicured garden visible from the window, the gleaming marble floor of the entrance hall, and the numerous film awards adorning the walls all tell the story of my past glory. But what's most precious to me now is the family photo displayed in the living room. It shows my daughter Julia, her husband Tom, and my 6-year-old treasure, grandson Ethan. Whenever I see the three of them smiling brightly, I feel happy but also somewhat uneasy. Lately, I've been increasingly worried that something important might be missing from their seemingly perfect lives. In the living room bathed in morning sunlight, I check my schedule for the day while sipping my usual coffee. Volunteer work at LA United Way in the morning, a board meeting in the afternoon, and plans to pick up my grandson Ethan in the evening. Looks like another busy day, I mutter to myself as I get ready. As I drive, I gaze at the glamorous Los Angeles cityscape. I catch glimpses of places I once chose as movie locations. Amidst these nostalgic sights, I arrive at the LA United Way office. "Good morning, Meryl," Sarah at the reception greets me cheerfully. "It's been 5 years since I started volunteering here. They've become like a second family to me." "Good morning, Sarah. What's on the agenda for today?" "We have a meeting about the new food assistance program at 10 a.m. in the meeting room." "Thank you. I'm looking forward to it." Time flies when I'm immersed in volunteer work. Filled with a sense of fulfillment, I head to the afternoon board meeting. In the evening, when I arrive at Ethan's school, he runs towards me with a big smile. "Grandma." As I embrace Ethan, I savor the moment of happiness. However, I suddenly notice something concerning. Ethan's clothes seem a bit old and too small for him. "Ethan, didn't you get new clothes?" "No. Mom and Dad said they're too busy." Ethan's words cast a small shadow over my heart. Julia and Tom's life certainly seems busy. Lavish dinners at high-end restaurants, overseas trips, extravagant parties. Their social media is filled with glamorous photos. But behind all that, are they neglecting something important? Back home, as I have dinner with Ethan, I ask him about his school life and friends. Seeing Ethan talk happily warms my heart. However, I'm concerned that he doesn't talk much about memories with his parents. After putting Ethan to bed, I ponder Julia and Tom's lifestyle, and their approach to parenting. On the surface, everything seems fine. But my maternal instinct is warning me that something is off. I considered making a phone call but decided it was too late tonight. I resolved to contact Julia tomorrow and headed to bed, picturing Ethan's smile in my mind. The next morning, last night's anxiety resurfaced as soon as I woke up. I called Julia before I had even finished breakfast. But there was no answer. I left a message on her voicemail asking her to call me back and went about my day's activities, feeling uneasy. By the afternoon, I still hadn't heard back from Julia. Normally, I wouldn't worry, but today I couldn't shake off my uneasiness. I'll go check on them, I decided, canceling my plans and heading to Julia's house. In the quiet residential area of Beverly Hills, I arrived at Julia's house. The silent mansion greeted me. There was no response when I rang the intercom. As I walked around the house, I noticed a storage shed in the backyard. That's when I heard it. A faint sound, almost like a dog whimpering. "Is anyone there?" I called out, but there was no human response. Instead, I heard a weak dog's bark. As I approached the shed, I heard another faint sound. My heart started racing. I nervously reached for the door handle and... Ethan. Max. An unbelievable sight unfolded before me. In the dimly lit shed, Ethan was sitting with the family dog, Max. Unbelievably, they were both wearing collars. "Grandma." Ethan calls out weakly. Max whimpers softly. I rushed in and hugged Ethan. His body was cold and trembling slightly. Max looked at us pitifully. "It's okay, Grandma's here." "What happened?" Tears well up in Ethan's eyes. "Mom and Dad." As I listened to his story, anger and sadness swirled within me. Julia and Tom had gone on a trip to the Four Seasons Maui. And they had left Ethan and Max behind. They said to stay here because it costs money to use electricity at home, and to take care of Max. Ethan's voice trembles. "Food. Water. They left some in the fridge, but it's all gone now." I shared it with Max. Alarms go off in my head. This isn't just neglect. It's serious child abuse. And animal abuse too. "Listen, Ethan. You've done nothing wrong. You took good care of Max. Grandma will take care of everything now." While hugging Ethan, I took out my cell phone. First, I called 911. "This is an emergency. A 6-year-old child and a dog have been locked in a storage shed. They're both wearing collars. The parents are absent." Following the operator's instructions, I tried to stay calm. But inside, a flame of anger was burning. The few minutes until the police arrived felt like an eternity. When I finally heard the police siren, I felt a small sense of relief. "Over here." I waved to guide the officers. 2 officers carefully began to assess the situation. Seeing their expressions grow stern, I realized once again the seriousness of the situation. "We'll contact DCFS and Animal Control," said the veteran-looking officer. While waiting for the DCFS staff to arrive, I continued to hold Ethan. Max was still trembling beside us. "It's okay, you're safe now," I repeated over and over, trying to reassure Ethan and Max, but also to calm myself. When Carol Johnson from DCFS arrived, the situation became more official. "Ms. Thompson, please tell me what happened." With a trembling voice, I explained everything from discovering Ethan to what he had told me. "I understand. The safety of Ethan and the dog is our top priority. I'm going to recommend temporary protective custody. Carol's voice was filled with determination. At that moment, I sensed that my life was about to change dramatically. Disappointment in my daughter, love for my grandson, and above all, a determination to see justice done. Amidst various emotions, one resolve solidified. I'll take custody of Ethan and Max. Carol seemed a bit surprised but quickly showed understanding. I see. Let's proceed with the necessary steps. Holding Ethan's hand and gently stroking Max's neck, I renewed my determination. The road ahead would not be easy. But I was ready to fight to protect Ethan's smile and Max's safety. As we left the house, Ethan said in a small voice, "Grandma, thank you." Max wagged his tail a little. Their response strengthened my resolve even more. A few days after bringing Ethan and Max to my home, the police and DCFS investigation began in earnest, and my house suddenly became the center of the case. Sitting on the sofa in the living room, answering questions from Carol Johnson of DCFS, I was struck by a sense of unreality. "Ms. Thompson, was there anything concerning about your grandson's daily life?" I take a deep breath and answer. "Recently, I noticed that Ethan's clothes were old and not fitting him well. But I never imagined it would come to this." Carol nods gently while taking notes. "How were his parents behaving?" This question sends a pang through my heart. On the surface, everything seemed fine. But now that I think about it. As my words trail off, Detective Johnson from the police enters the room with new information. "Ms. Thompson, our investigation has revealed new facts." His voice is grave, and my heart starts racing. "Your daughter's husband, Tom, has been rushed to the emergency room multiple times over the past 6 months for prescription drug overdoses." I'm at a loss for words. Tom's drug abuse. I had no idea. Detective Johnson continues. "And your daughter Julia seems to have accumulated significant debt from online gambling." At this moment, I felt as if I could hear my world crumbling. My beloved daughter, a gambling addict. Carol begins to speak quietly. This kind of environment is extremely dangerous for a child. I'm going to recommend extending the temporary custody. I nod silently. Although my mind was in turmoil, one thing was clear: Ethan's safety was the top priority. That night, after putting Ethan to bed, I spent a long time staring at the family photo. Smiling Julia, kind-looking Tom, and innocent Ethan. When did things become so distorted? Struggling between my love for my daughter and my grandson's safety, I couldn't hold back my tears. However, with the morning sun came a new determination within me. I must take action to protect Ethan, even if it means damaging my relationship with my beloved daughter. I pick up the phone and dial with trembling fingers. "Hello, is this Greenberg Law Firm? I'd like to be referred to a child welfare specialist attorney." At my first meeting at Greenberg Law Firm, veteran child welfare specialist attorney Martha Goldstein looks at me with a stern yet warm gaze. "Ms. Thompson, I understand the situation. The legal proceedings ahead won't be easy, but let's do our best for your grandson's future." Martha's words gave me a sense of reassurance. I believe her 50-year career will help us overcome this difficult situation. Let's start by gathering evidence, Martha says efficiently while organizing documents. Testimonies from neighbors, Ethan's school records, and medical records. Everything will be important. I nod, strengthening my resolve. For Ethan's sake, I'll overcome any difficulty. From that day on, my days became hectic. I visited Ethan's school to meet with teachers, went around the neighborhood collecting testimonies. Sometimes I felt like giving up, but every time I remembered Ethan's smile, new strength welled up inside me. One day, Martha gave me important advice. Ms. Thompson, we need to prepare financially for the trial. For child support, lawyer fees, and most importantly, for Ethan's future. Hearing those words, I made a big decision. The house where Julia and Tom had been living actually belonged to me. I'll sell that house. Martha looked surprised but quickly showed understanding. That's a big decision. Indeed, it might be the best option. That afternoon, I met with Rodney Harris, a high-end real estate agent. From the large window of his office, the Los Angeles cityscape stretches out before us. Ms. Thompson, I understand your decision. However, the current real estate market is a bit stagnant. I interrupt him. I understand, Rodney. But I need to hurry. Even if it's below market value, I want to sell it as soon as possible. Rodney looked a bit surprised but quickly returned to his professional demeanor. Understood. I'll do my best. The next few weeks were busy with house photography, setting up open houses, and negotiating with buyers. Finally, the day of the sale arrived. As I signed the contract, my heart was filled with complex emotions. This house is full of memories from Julia's childhood. But now, it's time to let go of this house for Ethan's future. This is one step forward, I muttered to myself. As I left the house, I looked back one last time. The house was beautifully illuminated by the setting sun. Hoping that this house would become the stage for new memories under its new owners, I quietly closed the door. With this, I had secured funds to protect Ethan's future. However, this is just the beginning. I took a deep breath, preparing for the legal battle ahead. A few days after selling the house, I was preparing for Julia and Tom's return. Along with my lawyer Martha, the police, DCFS, and real estate agent Rodney, we were waiting at the house where Julia and Tom used to live. Tension filled the room. Suddenly, we heard a car. Looking out the window, I saw a luxury car slowly pull up in front of the house. Julia and Tom got out. Tan skin and expensive clothes. Seeing them act as if nothing had happened made anger well up inside me. The two stopped in front of the house. They stared at the sold sign, expressions of surprise on their faces. And the moment they saw the police vehicles and DCFS car, I could see the blood drain from Julia's face. What is this? Julia's voice trembled. Tom remained silent and hurried towards the entrance. When he opened the door, we appeared before their eyes. Mom. What happened? Julia's voice was filled with confusion and fear. I took a deep breath and began to speak calmly. Julia, Tom. There's something I need to explain. Over the next few minutes, I told them everything from discovering Ethan to selling the house. As I spoke, Julia's expression changed from shock to denial, and then to anger. That's a lie. We would never abuse Ethan. Julia shouted. Tom suddenly became aggressive. What right do you have to do this? Selling our house without permission. A police officer stepped forward and began to explain the situation. Please calm down, both of you. There are serious suspicions of child abuse. We're now entering formal investigation and legal proceedings. Julia suddenly turned her anger towards me. It's your fault, Mom. Always interfering with us. While pained by my daughter's words, I maintained a firm attitude. Julia, this is all for Ethan. His safety is the most important thing. Tom suddenly uttered threatening words. If you do this, you'll regret it. I have powerful connections. You all. At that moment, a police officer intervened and restrained Tom. That's a criminal threat. Please refrain from further such statements. As the atmosphere in the room suddenly became heavy, the DCFS staff stepped forward and began to explain the future procedures. We ask that you refrain from contacting Ethan temporarily. Until the court hearing. Watching Julia and Tom's expressions freeze, I prayed in my heart. May this painful journey lead to a happy future for Ethan. Los Angeles Family Court. As I open the heavy doors, the tense atmosphere of the courtroom envelopes me. Knowing that Ethan's future will be decided here makes me feel a sense of gravity. The prosecution's opening statement begins. A young but powerful female prosecutor states the facts in a calm tone. This case is a serious instance of child neglect. The defendants locked their 6-year-old son in a storage shed and abandoned him with a dog. This is clearly an act of abuse. The prosecutor continues. Moreover, the father's drug abuse, the mother's gambling addiction, and other factors that threaten the child's healthy growth had become the norm. I glance at Julia and Tom. They both sit with hard expressions, but I can see Tom's hand trembling slightly. Next, the witness examination begins. First, the Johnsons, Ethan's neighbors, take the stand. Yes, we often heard them fighting loudly late into the night. And we frequently saw Ethan outside alone. Next, Ethan's homeroom teacher testifies. Ethan has been forgetting his homework more often in the past few months, and he's been more distracted during class. Also, he seemed reluctant to change for PE. The testimony of Dr. Brown, a child psychologist, was particularly impressive. Ethan shows signs of serious trauma. Appropriate care and a stable environment are essential. As I listened to these testimonies, my heart filled with pain. To think that Ethan had been suffering so much. The defense's arguments for Julia and Tom were, as expected, full of excuses and shifting blame. Our clients never intended to abuse their child. It was merely a temporary lapse in judgment. However, an unexpected development occurred during the trial. The prosecution submitted new evidence. The defendants are suspected of tax evasion over the past 3 years. Furthermore, there are allegations of insurance fraud. As the courtroom erupted into commotion, I was shocked but also made a kind of resolution. There's no turning back now. Finally, it was my turn to take the stand. I take a deep breath and look at the judge. Ethan is the light of my life. Seeing his smile is my greatest happiness. My voice trembles slightly. But recently, Ethan had lost that smile. I want to bring back his smile. As the courtroom falls silent, I continue. Yes, Julia is my daughter. But now, Ethan's safety and happiness are the top priority. I want to spend the rest of my life providing Ethan with a loving home and a bright future. Holding back tears, I spoke my final words. Ethan has the right to be loved, protected, and to chase his dreams. Please, give him that opportunity. As I finish my testimony and return to my seat, I prayed in my heart, hoping these words would change Ethan's future. In the courthouse hallway, I clutched lawyer Martha's arm with trembling hands. It's time for the verdict. The heavy doors open, and we enter the courtroom. Judge Harris begins to speak. After careful consideration of the evidence, this court has reached the following verdict. A moment of silence feels like an eternity. Full custody of Ethan Thompson is granted to his grandmother, Merrill Thompson. Tears of relief stream down my cheeks. I can protect Ethan. These words fill my heart. However, the verdict didn't end there. The defendant Julia Thompson is sentenced to 5 years of probation and 2,000 hours of community service for child neglect and economic crimes. The community service will be carried out at homeless shelters in Los Angeles City. I could see Julia's face turning pale. The defendant Tom Thompson is sentenced to 5 years in prison for child abuse, drug-related crimes, and economic crimes. The sentence will be served at California State Prison. Tom collapsed into his chair. Furthermore, both defendants are fined a total of $500,000. As the verdict ended and we left the courtroom, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. Joy of victory mingled with sadness over the family's breakdown. A few weeks later, Ethan and I moved into a new house. It's a single-family home in a lush suburb. From Ethan's room, you can see a large backyard. Grandma, is this my new room? Ethan's eyes sparkle. Yes, Ethan. This is our new beginning. Ethan happily runs around the room but suddenly stops and looks anxious. Will I never see Mom and Dad again? I take a deep breath and answer gently. No, that's not the case. Mom and Dad are facing their own problems right now. But I'm sure you'll see them someday. Ethan nodded, seeming a bit relieved. That weekend, Ethan started psychotherapy. The kind smiling therapist, Jennifer, began healing Ethan's emotional wounds through play. A month after therapy started, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from Julia. Mom, can I see Ethan? Her voice sounded smaller and weaker than I had ever heard it. After some internal conflict, I allowed a short, supervised visit. When Ethan and Julia reunited, seeing tears glisten in both their eyes lit a small flame of hope in my heart. There's still a long way to go to fully restore family bonds. But I decided to believe that something might start from this small step. A year has passed since then. Our lives have changed dramatically. The nonprofit organization I established, Second Chance Kids, works to prevent child abuse and support victims. I feel a deep sense of fulfillment being able to support many children and their families using my own experiences. Ethan has adapted to his new school and made many friends. Every time I see his smile, I'm convinced that this fight was not in vain. Julia is also changing little by little. She's seriously working on addiction rehabilitation, and regular visits with Ethan have been established. I can sense the old sparkle returning to her eyes. Tom is still serving his sentence, but I hear he's actively participating in rehabilitation programs. It will still take time to fully restore family bonds. But we're definitely moving forward, step by step. I want to continue balancing family restoration and social contribution. For Ethan's smile, and for children in similar situations. Our story has just begun. We continue to walk towards a new chapter, with hope in our hearts.